Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today we are continuing with the conversation around elite coaching and helping clients get next level results. Andrew and I kicked this off last week. Now, if you sense a little bit more of that alpha energy on the show today, that is because we're joined by Natalie as well. I am excited to get into this. Natalie, I feel like we haven't had you on here forever. You have been away on vacation and whatnot. Fill us in what's been going on with you. Any personal updates from you before we get into it?
Want to be here then, if that's my intro. I'm
I am. It's a. It,
just gonna
it
go back
is
on vacation.
nothing to report from the last couple of weeks.
No, I feel like I've updated each of you, so this is like my third time saying the same thing. So apologies for being redundant. No, so this is week 11 for prep. Like had some crazy drops the last couple weeks, which was really cool. Probably a lot due to just like less stress, being on actual vacation. Like almost 3.5 pounds down like last week or something, which is kind of nuts. Obviously kept up with everything on vacation. Like I brought up like all my own protein because I also didn't want to spend my vacation cooking or like thinking about where I was gonna like what I was gonna eat, or like I just didn't have the capacity for that. And honestly, for people who are, on the fence about like, oh, do I want to continue to push fat loss or make progress on vacation? I have to tell you what, like it honestly automated so many things and made it so easy. Like it just like wasn't even a thought. I just kind of had to pull the trigger and like eat what I said I was gonna eat, which was like mostly already prepared. So from that perspective, and then I had more time to like nap. So and train and do all my favorite things. So that was really nice. And energy took a big dive last week. And I was getting a little bit nervous. In a lot of ways it really just felt like, wow, like this is okay, prep starts now. But it's also back up this week, and I think probably just due to being in my routine, and the normal amount of like stress that I carry is fueling me. But as such, my weight is actually sitting up 2 pounds this week, which is strange. Like it spiked 2 pounds after Sunday's leg day, and then it's just hanging out there. Um, I'm not really stressed about it because I know I'm not doing anything quote wrong. And also, I had a really smooth 10 weeks. So if this is the first bump in the road, which I'm not sure it's even officially called that, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, you've lost very, very consistently for the first 10 weeks, as you said. I think that is super important. It's not like you've continued to do the thing just as well as you did for the last 10 weeks, right? We're not suddenly just broken, but it is. I'd say it's more abnormal how consistently you had lost so far and how quickly you lost so far than it is to see like things. Oh, the scale's up a little bit this week. Cool. Anything else from you? Or Andrea, any personal updates on your end?
No, nothing from me. Same as last week. Still just coasting in the build, getting stronger, which is fun.
Training and
Cool.
eating, like the
Yep.
two things.
It's a good place to
Cool.
be.
All right. Well, on that note, then let's get into the actual episode. So last time we talked through a little bit more. We talked through kind of our backstory, how we got into coaching. I want to talk through a little bit more of the actual X's and O's, working through things with clients, and kind of our mindset with how we approach things for this episode. So this should be quite valuable. Again, if you're a coach with a few clients who are struggling currently, kind of trying to troubleshoot that, or again, if you're just trying to figure out how to take things to the next level as someone who is coaching yourself, this should be super helpful. I'm kind of going to bounce around here. I want to talk about first and foremost the training side of things. We put a huge, huge emphasis on training. I think a lot more than like I know a lot more than any other coaching company, at least that I have worked with. Natalie, like from your perspective, why do you think that's such an important part of what we do, or do you? I
I
hope
don't
you
think
do.
at all. No, I think the clients who we are blessed to work with, so the people that are attracted to our company, that come to us seeking our help, are those who really want to change their physique. So most people have a goal of not just like living leaner or like getting a lean body. They understand that a huge part of that goal is building muscle and building the shape. So yes, like fat loss is probably part of some part of their journey along the way. But they know that to build the shape that they want and to actually look different and change their shape, that comes from having muscle. And no amount of food puts muscle on without training. So training is what drives the stimulus for change. So hence it is so important. We can't just like fuel training and then not train properly because then we're basically just eating more food than our body needs. And that's how people end up gaining excess body fat, which is honestly, I would say like one of the biggest problems that a lot of new clients start with us with. They're like, "Hey, I've tried building muscle on my own, but I just got fat. Like what am I missing?" And a lot of times this is exactly what they're missing. Whether it is due to intelligent program design, like adequate or appropriate volume or junk volume as well, and also proper training execution and intensity falls under that as well.
Do y'all find that it's quite frequent people don't understand that that is the problem in terms of like how important training is, or like as a whole, how important building muscle is for what they want?
1,000%. I think there are so many people that we talk to um, that are under the impression that all they're missing is like the right set of macros for their goals. And that is honestly so far from, I mean, I could really get into that, but like there's also so many people that come to us that are like, "Oh, I just need help with my nutrition. Like I don't need help with training." And we kind of try very hard to like talk them over to the training side of things, not because we're trying to like upsell or anything like that, but because it is that important to the results that they seek.
I just posted about this the other day. It's interesting how frequently it is someone in their application will say, I spend so much time in the gym. I'm already pretty lean, but I don't look like I work out. I think I just need your help with nutrition. And in that, if that is you, training is probably the biggest problem that we need to solve, because that is, if we're already quite lean, we don't look like we lift, we don't have enough muscle. Training is a stimulus for building muscle. We're missing that signal, like something is wrong there, which again it's, I don't want to say it's training is more important than nutrition. Like they're both quite important. But for building muscle, no matter how dialed in your nutrition is, we won't get anywhere if your training isn't good. And most people's training, honestly, isn't very good when they start initially, be it from a programming perspective, an execution perspective, or an intensity perspective. So yeah, huge. I see the same thing all the time. Um, Something we talk about quite a lot is the importance of getting the right training stimulus for building muscle. And I think this ties in, this is a pretty natural segue because we're talking about how important this is, like what we need to do differently. Andrea, like from your end, what do you think that means? Like, how do we get someone experiencing the right stimulus? Like, how do we even quantify this? Like, what's the right stimulus?
Stimulus is basically the driver for your muscle to grow. And I think that a lot of people they're in the gym, but they're misplacing the tension that they're trying to ultimately get from each set. And it seems like most people are missing one or the other or both of they're either not training hard enough or they work hard, but the intent just isn't there. So I'll have a lot of people where like, man, we just need to slow this way down because you're speeding through the transition points in your lift, and that's going to mean that the stimulus is not the volume that you're getting, it's not going where you want it to go. Like we're trying to train your glute here, but you're speeding through it so much that just all these little other muscles are going to be taking a lot of the tension, or your actual joints are going to be taking on a lot of that tension. And so we're not actually getting the target muscle to be challenged enough to grow. So like what we're focusing on for, of course, like programming is the first thing. Like before we ever get started with somebody, we're making sure that we have a good program written for them. But then once that is in place, we're making adjustments there. We're really focusing in on making every rep count from their videos. So somebody sends in a training video and we want to make sure first that their form is good, like it's safe, the tension's going where it's supposed to go. They're set up appropriately and all of that. But then like let's execute it in a tempo that makes sense and make sure that this time that you're spending in the gym is actually you're making good use of it. Because I see so many people in my own gym where it's like, man, I see you here every week. You're here anyway. We could do so much of this better. Like you could spend the exact same amount of time and get so much more from this. So that's basically like what we're trying to help our clients with whenever we're reviewing their videos.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, a lot of it ties into the program design as well. That's kind of like the foundation, the starting point. And I mean, to grow muscle, we need significant, like the muscle needs to experience significant intention, right? That's going to be the signal for growth, which basically we need to be able to take whatever tissue it is we're trying to grow quite close to failure. And there's a lot that goes into that. As you said, like, are we misplacing that tension? Are we just not executing well? That's where like the training videos help a ton. Exercise selection in terms of this is big for a lot of people. I think it is a really good foundation because so often it's like, well, my goal is to grow my glutes or let's say my goal is to grow my quads, and then we talk through like what their exercise selection has looked like, and it's okay, well, even like looking at how you're built, like you're naturally someone who's very like hip dominant, let's say. It's hard for us to get a lot of knee flexion, and then when we look at your exercise selection, if it is all just like a Smith machine squat, um whatever, like even like a leg press where we really can't get much knee flexion, like this is part of why we're struggling to get the stimulus we want. So I think that's one of the most fun parts of coaching, honestly, is helping someone looking at, okay, how are we built? How do we move? What equipment do you have available? And then really dialing in based on that little things like, okay, for you, this hack squat or like this leg press specifically is going to work so well because we have like this angled foot plate. We can really get a lot of knee flexion here to really drive tension to your quads. This is going to be like a completely different experience for you. And I think that's like one of the most fun parts of coaching. But most people just haven't necessarily been coached to that. Now, either of you feel free to jump in. When a client says, and this is more so relevant for a new client, I would say, when someone like says, okay, I train super hard, how do we know, like, right away we were probably going to like see some signs like their programming isn't effective? Like, what are we looking for that would signal, okay, this person's programming probably isn't effective, even if they say like they're training super hard?
Lots of inappropriate movements for their goal. So we've talked a ton about how things like barbell back squat may not be an appropriate lift for somebody with certain limb lengths. So for me, if I was trying to grow my quads with a barbell back squat, just wouldn't go very well because my femurs are long. I end up with a very hip dominant squat. So there's a lot of that. Most of the women that come in from my experience that say they want to grow their quads, they are built more like me, where we have to have
Oh yeah.
specific movements in place in order to get good knee flexion in order to grow their quads. And so proper exercise selection is huge.
That's how Natalie was. She had tiny quads before I coached her. Just kidding. Natalie was so jacked. When I remember being like, damn, dude, you are so jacked. Why didn't you tell me this when we were on the phone?
Thanks for believing in me and giving me the benefit of the doubt. Um, a lot of redundancy in programming
Yeah.
is really a big one, and then that can be really closely linked to like junk volume and also execution, right? Because it's like if we were actually executing these movements well, we'd probably be getting like a lot more ROI. But it's like, why do we have like three of the same thing in the same day, like essentially? We're
Mhm.
basically taking like a very similar movement pattern or stimulus and like putting it on three different machines or
Can you
something
give
like
me an example for the listener of like what that might look like?
that. Let's say like I don't know, let's say like someone's going this what I don't know why this is the first thing that pops to mind. I think because we were talking about quads, but like let's say like someone's on a pendulum squat and then they go like right into a hack squat. It's like I probably wouldn't do that. Like we're probably not getting as much. Like we could choose one of those on one day and make that super impactful. And then maybe like if quads are a priority, put the other one on the other day, on the other lower body training day or something like that. But it's like I think a lot of people just kind of like fall into that camp of like, well, quads are the priority, so I just need to like turn a fire hose on it. And it's like, well, I think there's a little bit of that. And I think it's also probably not actually understanding that some of those things are redundant. I
Yeah.
think you have one side of the camp that's like very extreme, that's like, I'm gonna throw everything at this problem. And then you have the other side of the camp that like actually doesn't understand that they're doing that. And you kind of like you cast a wide net and you get nothing, right? We can be a lot more strategic because at that point we do start to get into things like junk volume where we're just like working like kind of hard at like lots of things and it's like not really that specific when again like you want to be a sniper with your training. You want to like go in and like attack and be very strategic with what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, or like a really good example of that I think would be, let's say it's chest day and you're training. I don't remember last time I programmed just a chest day, but you're doing like a barbell bench press.
For all those
And then,
ladies with chest goals.
correct, all of you ladies who want to get just super jacked pecs, we're doing like a barbell bench press, then a dumbbell bench press, and then we're doing like a decline press, barbell press, and like a decline dumbbell press. You get the idea, right? It is basically just the same movement pattern, a slightly different implement to load it with. And even looking at like, hey, is this more challenged in this lengthened or in the short end? Cool. If it's again like we're more lengthened challenged, it's basically the same movement. Like, are we necessarily getting more out of that? Now there's like the dumbbells are a little bit less stable, the barbell more stable, etc. But like typically, like no, like it's not going to make a lot of sense for us to have a lot of these redundant patterns where a lot of times someone's approach to programming is just, I just want this person to feel smashed at the end of it, right? So it's like, what's every squat variation I can think of? They're going to do barbell squats, then they're going to do hack squats, then they're going to do goblet squats. And it's like, dude, we're doing like the same thing. Like just, we're sweeping the same portion of the floor over and over. I think, what is it? Ishak has the same first and last name on Instagram. Really great follow. I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about, but I've heard him use that example and I think it's quite good. But relative to that, you mentioned junk volume, Natalie, which is another conversation I've been having quite a lot lately because typically when someone starts, I don't know where you guys will typically, if you guys will pull someone back to this. Typically, I like to start most people around like, hey, 2 sets for most movements. Let's see how we respond and adjust things from there. And lately I've gotten a lot more questions around, okay, well, I was previously doing like 3 to 4 sets. Isn't this going to be too little? Aren't I going to like lose progress? And I mean, like initially it's easy to be like, well, how was that working for you? Which I know is kind of snarky, but I think that is important to ask is like, was this working for us before? But then also understanding like, as we mentioned from an intensity perspective, most people, again, it's really going to be significant tension is how we stimulate growth. We need to take a tissue quite close to failure in order to stimulate growth. The last few reps before failure are by far going to be the most stimulative. I was just explaining this to the client yesterday. Like, let's say the theory is we have about like the last 5 reps before failure are going to stimulate most muscle growth by far. And as we get closer to failure, each of those becomes more stimulative. Let's say like if I give someone 4 sets of a hack squat, just from a psychological perspective, set 1, you're not going to want to push the point where it's like, I can truly only do 1 more. And this is again, like learning what 1 RIR, 1 rep in the reserve looks like. Like most people's gauge of it, like what they think 1 rep in the tank is like, we're actually at like 5, right? Whereas it really should be extremely difficult to get there. It should feel super slow and grindy. So like, when we understand what it actually looks like to get there, like that set should be very hard. And very few people can actually do like 4 sets taken to that level. But if we know we have to do 4, like people are going to leave plenty in the tank the first 3 sets. And honestly, typically don't push that 4 set as hard either. So if we look at it as like, even like do the math, like the last like few reps for last 5 reps, let's say are the stimulative ones, we might get like 1, 2 effective reps per set there across 4 sets. Or if we do just 2 sets and we get to actually get to 1 RIR, we're still getting the same amount of effective reps, but we are doing so with a lot less fatigue as well. Anything else y'all see in terms of like why, or like when a client asks a question like that, like what else do you kind of use to explain that?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask other things. What are you asking? Other things that
When a client
like
asks
why
like, hey, my
somebody's not
volume's
getting
so
the
low,
result?
like why is my volume so low now?
Oh, okay. No,
Any
that's not
other
what
like
I'm
things
doing.
you like to explain that go along with that? Or like why this might work better?
Well, just once we get somebody pushing hard enough, sometimes that's kind of where recovery capacity is, and we don't need more than that to grow. And more than that is actually just digging a bigger hole than what we can recover out of. And so more isn't better. Sometimes more means we're actually going to grow less. And so if we start at like a median place with sets, then we can always adjust and add more. But I would rather make sure that somebody's getting there to or close to failure and add, rather than put them into a place where they're not recovering from it, and therefore like we're seeing a ton of rep drop off on that last one, or we're just not growing as much from it.
Absolutely. Anything else from you, Natalie?
Yeah, I would say like your muscles aren't counting sets and reps. Like they're responding to time under tension, like and your proximity to failure. So, we take your example of like 4 sets of something. I know for me psychologically, if I'm staring at like a logbook that is asking me to do 4 sets of literally anything, like
Anything.
even a bicep curl, like I don't want to do that. Like I just don't want to do that. If I think a good like kind of litmus test here could be if you're staring at a logbook and it's asking you to do like 4 sets of a hack squat and you're like, okay, cool, no problem. You probably need to train harder.
Right, yeah.
Like that should strike fear into your heart, and be like, no way. Um, yeah, I think that's
From the angle of signs that someone's programming isn't effective, even though they say they're going hard, that we mentioned before, that is a big one for me. If someone's like, I do like 4 or 5 sets of all these movements, okay, right away I can tell you we aren't training hard enough. Because again, as you mentioned, Andrea, it is very, very rare that I see someone need to do. I never see. I can't think of like really any instances at the moment where I have somebody doing that many sets, right? When someone is training, when we're truly training hard enough, 2, maybe occasionally 3 sets almost always is plenty for us to see great progress on. And again, we can get to the point where we actually are doing more than we need to kind of maximize the stimulus, more than we can recover from, and we're actually hurting progress. So that's for sure a big thing for me, is like if someone's volume is like we're doing 4 or 5 sets and like how is that? Oh, not bad. Like I'll do like heavy days, light days, or something like that. Like that's typically me a pretty big red flag. Anything else as far as training volume, stimulus for change before we get into kind of a different topic here?
I was just going to add that the other thing that I see is just changing things way too frequently. That's the other thing. If somebody's like, I'm training hard, but I'm just not seeing my body change, it's like, well, we're going 4 to 6 weeks, and then we have a whole new program that we have to then learn. And it takes our body, it takes a while to get really good at a movement to be able to like recruit the muscle that you're wanting to recruit on this movement. And then by the time you learn it, you're off to something else.
Absolutely. That's so common as well. That's quite frequent. Like people want to progress in 4 week blocks. And a lot of times it's like, well, I'm experienced. So because of that, I feel like my body adapts to things quicker. So I need to change things up quicker. And what's going on there? That's not actually the case. What's going on there is, as you said, Andrea, it's like a skill adaptation. As we're acquiring the skill of a new movement, we'll progress quickly. Not actually us building muscle, we're just getting better at the skill at that point. When it starts to get a lot harder to progress, it's not your body's adapted and we need something new. This is just what like normal hypertrophy training should look like. We're
Yeah, now
past
you're
this
finally
period
building
where,
from it.
right, this is just like us getting to the point where we're actually building muscle. I think that's like more like intermediate clientele, people who have gotten past the beginner stage, or even taking clients from, this is a conversation I have a lot with people who it's like, okay, we've been working together for like a yearish now. And it's like, man, my hack squat is progressing really slow. I think that's one that comes up a lot. And I'll look at their logbook and it's like, oh no, we're adding like a rep every week for most of these.
Yeah.
It's like, that's actually just like what it's like. Unfortunately, once we get to like an intermediate-ish stage, is it will just be like, like it's again a big difference between training feeling hard to progress and training not progressing. It will again just be like, it was a grind just to add that rep. It's not, it won't ever, unless we're introducing a new movement for a few weeks, it won't feel like it did when we were brand new to this, or like intelligent training where it's like we're just making crazy gains and it doesn't feel a whole lot harder. It will again like just typically feel pretty grindy, like adding a rep. Maybe we don't even add a rep to all of our sets. Maybe it's like I added a rep here, I matched here. Like that's pretty common. I think that's important to understand as we get more advanced. Anything else on that side of things y'all would want to mention?
Something I'll add, and I say this with kindness, but I think many people have a very kind of overinflated sense of how experienced they are on the training side of things. And again, I don't mean any like, I'm not trying to be disparaging or anything like that, but just because like you've been going to the gym for a couple years, like, oh, I do split squats all the time, like doesn't really mean you've been like training effectively. And more often than not, you haven't been. And that's the kind of roadblock that we run into. And that's what we help clients work through, is just like an overinflated sense of like experience level or training age. And that's when we start to get into the conversations of like, but this doesn't work for me. Like, oh, like this machine doesn't work for me. This doesn't feel right. This movement doesn't work. And it's like, well, but like, how effectively have we been executing at that? Um, and it's like, oh, well, I've been doing this for a while, and so like I know what works for my body, and it's kind of like, well, respectfully, you don't though, and that's why you're here. So, approaching your training with humility is really important, and I know the three of us, as long as we've been doing this and coaching this, we're still grinding. We're still sending training videos to our coaches and looking for ways that we can improve and do better. And it's never over. It's never there. And I know like a lot of my coaches, like I have like a million. No, like my two coaches.
Not far away.
Yeah, right. Are very open to discussion. If I come back and I'm like, yeah, like this just didn't feel right. But usually we're going to unpack that, versus just accepting at face value, like, oh, okay, well, he said this doesn't feel right. So like, I'm going to change it for them. It's like more often than not, when someone's coming back with something and they're like, I don't like this movement. This doesn't feel right. Okay, well, let's actually dig in and find out why first, before we just like scrap it. It's not that I don't believe you. I believe there is probably a very good reason that this doesn't feel right or isn't effective. But 9 times out of 10, I bet we can make it effective.
That's super important. I have this conversation quite frequently with new clients because it will often come up, hey, this movement didn't feel good, so I subbed in this instead. And like week 1 of training, it's like, okay, first understanding that, and it's okay to have a conversation around this. It's important. But understanding that there's a specific reason that we chose this, why this might be superior relative to like what we swapped it for. But there's always a huge element of execution, and like we can improve this. We can make this a really good stimulus for you. A lot of times it's like specific for like, again, like that person who like, hey, we like really struggle to build our quads. We're really like hip dominant. So a lot of times there's just a ton of, it's not that this is a bad movement for us. There's just like, it's not going to feel good for us at first. It's going to take some time to really master. Even I think movements that are like, this feels a little bit uncomfortable for me. Like I always feel my RDLs on my back, so I don't hinge. And I, in the past, used to, as a coach, okay, cool. Well, we're just going to like do you use other ways to build your glutes? But like your ability to hinge, not even from like looking jacked, which is of course most important, but your life outside of that is so important. Natalie, I think you have something wise to say. Jump in.
I was just gonna say, like, the biggest example is a client comes to us wanting to grow their glutes, but like RDLs don't feel good, so, and it's like, yo, like, let's unpack that, because if your goals are glutes, like, we need to learn how to hinge. Now, obviously, there are going to be some outliers, there are going to be some injury cases, like, I'm not talking about the outliers. I'm talking about, like, for most people that are coming to us with glute goals, we need to get you to learn how to hinge. Like that, and usually I think what we have found, the three of us have found, is that there's a lot we can clean up there and we can get you executing like a lot better. And therefore you're going to see better glute growth because now we're actually properly hinging. But I think, you were just, sorry.
No, that's like exactly what I was gonna say. I think that a lot of times when there is like a pain in with a movement or a movement doesn't feel good, we don't wish you to hurt yourself. Don't like push through pain. But it also isn't a reason for us to just okay, throw that in the scrap heap. We're not doing that one again. Again, a lot of like an RDL, hey, that's gonna be one of the best movements for us. Maybe the reason that you don't have the glutes you want is because you can't RDL. Probably is a big part of it. And we need to address that. And like it might be frustrating. This is the other thing, like you have to be willing to work through. I have a couple clients where we're working through things like, okay, we've had regress split squats from like a Smith machine to like a dumbbell or dumbbell split squat, etc. And it's like, well, I can't load this heavy now. I don't feel like I can push as hard. I don't like my lower body doesn't feel like as worked as it did when I was doing it with whatever, or like, can't I just do like a bilateral movement instead? That doesn't hurt. And it's like, hey, yes, short term we could, but long term, part of the reason we don't have the tissue we want is because of our inability to move. Like our hips, like our internal rotation of the hips is a huge issue that we need to focus on improving here. And that's again like a lot of times again like just because basically point being if something doesn't feel comfortable, it's really not again don't like hurt yourself, don't push through a lot of pain, but also like probably good sign that even like not just from a function perspective but from a physique perspective, us getting to the root of that and addressing it will probably make you a lot more jacked. Will look better. And you'll
That's
be happier.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, but it's really important, for people who feel like they're having to like make a regression or something like that. And like, hey, it doesn't hurt when I do something bilateral, like why can't we just do that? Like, why do I have to do this like unilateral split squat variation or something like that? It's like, I promise that at some point you are going to hit a very hard wall or plateau with that bilateral movement if we don't address this. And so that's how we see these things playing out. It's like, sure, we can just like continue to like brush it under the carpet and just like every time we like run into something like, oh, let's just sub this out, let's just sub this out. But if there is a like functional issue underneath that movement pattern, you will hit a plateau. And that's oftentimes when in training, people do hit plateaus. They're like, I just can't get past this. Or a plateau in terms of physique development. Like I'm just not kind of stopped growing or something. It's like,
Or injury.
because injury, because like this is what we're running into now because we actually never addressed this like your function at the hip.
There's a weak link there.
Yep.
And
so
if we just avoid that weak link instead of improving that weak link, at some point that's going to be a limiting factor. And the further you kick that can down the road, the worse that's going to end up being.
Just kicking the can down the road.
I mean, nothing kills physique gains like injury. So we want to avoid that.
It's very, very true. And again, it can be like a scary thing initially, but that's where like the communication and videos are just so important because it is a lot of times something like back pain with RDLs, especially, dude, it's almost always something that is actually so easy to fix and will make your training so much more productive in the future. But there might be a few frustrating weeks or even a few frustrating months where things aren't clicking. It takes time. It's not going to change overnight. Cool. Okay. Let's talk nutrition, specifically the Phasic approach to nutrition, which is a huge part of what we do. First, I think this isn't something that like nutrition periodization is a concept It's been around for a while. Physique, nutrition periodization, they're essentially interchangeable terms. But basically, the concept here is working through rather than just staying in one phase of nutrition all the time. Which why this is something we talk about so much is this is one of the biggest mistakes so many people are making is, for example, always trying to diet. So common, be it like a client who's just been doing their own thing and like basically I feel like I'm always dieting but never getting anywhere. Or I hear this shocking amount with clients coming from other coaches where it's like, I worked with my coach for like a year plus and we were dieting the entire time. So cool. So like, did they like adjust your food or anything like based on your progress? No, we just were like, hey, I think this is like a 500 calorie deficit. We just like stayed here and it was like a, and then sometimes there will be like the occasional adjustment, but it is quite surprising. Or like, hey, I got to my goal and then they're like, okay, now we have to stay here forever in order to maintain, which is also not how it works. But that's a big part of why this is something that we talk about so much is it is truly what so many people are missing in terms of, yes, there is a time for fat loss, but also we will build muscle so much better. We will improve your health so much more. Your life in general will just be better, more enjoyable when we're not in fat loss phases, except for being shredded is fun. Past that, like the other life things aren't quite as fun. Training will be better again, like your hormonally will get in a healthier place if we are working through these phases where we're focusing on really fueling well. Again, just not spending all of our time in a phase focused on fat loss, being in a deficit. Will basically put our body in a much more responsive place in the future. Now, I would ask either you go ahead and jump in. I need to let my dog in, but is there a particular phase in these phases of nutrition y'all think is the most misunderstood?
Misunderstood, I would say Recomp, maybe. I think the others I feel like are fairly straightforward. And so if we're talking about misunderstood, I would say people think that Recomp is something that either they can do forever without getting diminishing returns at some point. Or they don't understand how dialed in you need to be in order to accomplish Recomp. Recomp is not like maximum flexibility with
What
food.
is recall first?
It is some combination of building muscle and losing fat at the same time.
Okay, cool. Go on.
So, but you have to be very dialed in order to accomplish both of those things, and you have to have a lot of the more like smaller, finer details dials in order to accomplish that. Whereas with something like fat loss, it's a little bit more simple. We need to train to maintain muscle and be in a consistent calorie deficit. With a build, we need to be sending the right signal with our training and make sure that we're at least at maintenance, if not a little bit more calories. But with recomp, we're trying to accomplish both of those things. And so things like carb cycling can be really much more helpful, where cardio can be very beneficial here. Peri-workout nutrition becomes a lot more important, in my opinion, too. So I think that, yeah, that's my answer. Is I think that one's way more misunderstood.
Yeah, I think the recomp is kind of just a. I would say I'm typically looking at someone as if this person has the potential to build a lot of muscle. Basically, I think it makes more sense for them to like, let's say we have the potential, we don't have much muscle yet, and we still have a good amount of body fat as well. Okay,
Mhm.
they're probably gonna see like that nice fat loss recomp where they're gonna lose a lot of fat, build a lot of muscle at the same time. But I'm not actually approaching nutrition that much differently than I would if it was just like a fat loss phase for someone who had more muscle. It's just we have the like no matter what we're so new and sensitive to this like a good training stimulus that we're gonna build muscle pretty well regardless. Same thing as like a super skinny person who like maybe they're afraid to like gain a whole lot of weight. Like the idea of like a true like bulking or building phase is like more intimidating. So okay, maybe we're just gonna like focus on like lean gains recomp, right? What we're saying here, we're building a lot of muscle. But again, it's not like a I think it especially, and I think you're speaking to like as you get a little bit more advanced, like it doesn't. I agree. For a lot of people, as we get into like more intermediate to advanced territory, it's just like yeah, you do have to be quite dialed in to make it happen. And then also like us trying to like Natalie when we coached together, like it wouldn't have made sense for us. And you're way more jacked now, but even at the time, it wouldn't have made sense for us to like try to recomp your way to that photo shoot prep. You're already pretty lean and you already had a lot of muscle. We're gonna build muscle like someone who is a more advanced like you. We're gonna build muscle quite slow when we're in a deficit if we are building at all. Like trying to squeeze, but if we're also like approaching fat loss a lot slower, like it made it a lot more sense for us to just get that fat loss phase done with and then get to productive building rather than like trying to squeeze both out at the same time. It's just such a much slower way to get there.
Yeah, what I really like to say about Recomp is that, and I do think it is misunderstood because it's the holy grail. It's what everyone wants. Like, who wouldn't want to simultaneously build muscle and lose fat and like not see the scale go up? Like, who wouldn't want that, you know? But what I like to say is it's possible if there's something that you could be doing better. So if your nutrition is not like it's okay, kind of like eat clean, but it's not very dialed in. Okay, you dial that in, probably going to see some recomp. And assuming that this is being paired with like a good, resistance training, progressive overload program, right? Or like a lot of the clients we get, like they're actually doing okay on the nutrition side of things, but the training's not there. Okay, so we improve that. And therefore, like that becomes that new training stimulus. So like we can see some recomp there. So basically, like any of these like factors that go into body composition, if you got a weak link, you bring up that weak link intelligently, of course, like not like randomly, strategically, I should say. Probably going to see a little bit of recomp.
Sure.
But once you play that card, that's when we kind of move into this territory of like the intermediate to advanced that you guys were speaking to. It's like, okay, well now we've played all these cards out. So now we gotta pick somewhere to go. Like we're gonna go into a build, or like maybe at this point like we do need more fat loss, or it's gonna be very case user dependent. Um, but
For most people, I would say like the biggest window, at least we work with, again, like for sure, like plenty of fat loss cases, but it's typically like, hey, we're relatively lean. Yes, maybe we like for our goals, we need to get a bit leaner. But for most people, like the biggest opportunity or lever we have to pull for recomp is yes, experiencing that training stimulus and actually building more muscle tissue. But as Andrea said, like we have to be more dialed in on these things to get there. And that's the thing to understand is to pull that lever, we have to really get you training well first and then training really hard. And that's, I think, like, because almost, as yes, as you said, Natalie, like almost everyone who starts, there's like something they could be doing better. It is almost always we could be doing training better. So, like, I think almost everyone is initially like capable of some recomp. Again, like the more muscle we have, the less so. But that's like the thing that really determines like, does someone get that initially or not? Is how willing basically we are to take that feedback as far as like, I could be training harder. Okay, and like really get to that point. Like as sooner we can get to that point where we're executing well and really training hard, where your coach is like, dude, this looks great. Perfect effort. That's when we actually will, and like honestly string together a couple months like that. That's when we really start to see like, oh wow, this person is recomping a lot. If we're not able to get there, we're yes, we can lose some body fat, but we're just not going to build a whole lot, which again is kind of like the biggest lever to pull here. Anything else y'all would add? Natalie, is that your take on the most misunderstood phase as well? Do you have a different one?
I mean, I was probably gonna go the route of maintenance. I always
Take it
talk about.
away.
Oh, just that, under misunderstood and definitely undervalued and underutilized. No one really wants to do it. And I think that a lot of it is just the very binary nature of us as humans. Like we want to be in A or B. We want to be running towards something or away from something. We don't want to just like sit in that messy middle. It's in a lot of ways, fat loss is so much easier because it's a hard line, right? It's like this is what I have to do to like lose the body fat. I understand that. But there's no hard line when it's like this is what I need to do to maintain this. And, at any point after we've lost a significant amount of body fat, like a good maintenance period is how we're going to ensure that that becomes like your new body fat set point, right? Because like the body is gonna want to go right back where you started. Like that's what, like if you just kind of like take your hand off the wheel, that's what's gonna happen. Um, and I think most people need help understanding what it looks like to keep that hand on the wheel at maintenance, and like how to maintain the results. Like most people understand how to lose body fat. Um, but it's those hard conversations about like, hey, like how many times a week can I eat out? Like essentially what everyone wants to know is like, what can I get away with at maintenance? And
Same, yeah.
it's the hardest conversation because in my experience with most people have to be way more dialed in at maintenance than they think. And I think a lot of people just view maintenance as like punishment or like some purgatory that they're just killing time in before like coach will let them diet again.
It's just life in general, dude. I get it. I'm just
And
kidding.
it's
Go
like
on.
maintenance isn't punishment. Like this is how we come up for air between dieting efforts. It's how we cement your results from dieting. Like also a lot of people we work with, eventually at some point, like want to be able to do things more intuitively. It's like, well, when and where do you think that happens? Like, where do you learn that? Like, you don't learn to do things intuitively when you're in a calorie deficit. Like, so definitely misunderstood and and underappreciated,
For
undervalued.
sure, think it's one of the most important phases to work through with a coach. And yeah, it's the least sexy one because your body isn't changing quickly at maintenance. We can for sure build muscle at maintenance, but it's the most people, not from a muscle growth perspective, most people have never been there, but like from a like leanness perspective, most people have been able to like get to or close to the fat loss result they wanted. But just as frequently, the challenge is it's not like they can't white knuckle a diet for 12 weeks and get there. It's I can't maintain the result that I want. And that is, again, like honestly, probably one of the hardest skills to learn. It is one that does take the most time. It for sure takes, like dieting is a skill, but maintenance is one that takes more time, more intentional practice than dieting, I would say, 100%. I would for sure agree. I think it's the most undervalued, but yeah, really for most people, the most important. And I agree as well. Like life doesn't suck there. That's important to understand. Like I love my life when I am at maintenance now. I feel like I have plenty of flexibility, but it for sure is like took some time. It does take practice, and also, yeah, it is do unfortunately have to be more dialed in, I think, than we initially want to accept. I always use the analogy. Let's imagine like your physique is kind of like an apartment. We're in a nicer apartment now, and like rent is a little bit higher. If we're okay with that, like we have to be okay with like paying the rent as well. And it's okay if like we're not, but I think that's a really important expectation to set actually, because yeah, we typically do have to be more dialed in to stay at the level of lean most people want. It's also like, dude, we're gonna have to be quite dialed in to stay there, even at maintenance.
I think people have this perception that maintenance equals intuitive eating. Whereas like maintenance, what it really means is like I get to do whatever I want and I'm just gonna intrinsically know what to do. And I like your analogy a lot in terms of like the rent is higher here. Like we're living leaner now and you want to sustain this result. Like maybe you want to keep your visible abs and that is physiologically available to you. Um, like your quote maintenance life is not gonna look like some dude's life at maintenance who's like not doing this. Where it's like, oh, I just like now I just kind of like my body just knows what to do and like I'm just gonna go out to eat and like order what sounds good and I'll know. And it's like that's not an accurate representation of what maintenance is.
Fortunately, an unfortunate
Maintenance
truth.
is unique. Maintenance is unique to everyone individually. So what you have to do to maintain your results probably looks very different than what I may have to do to maintain my results. And then the conversation becomes, is that worth it to you? Is it worth it to me? If it's worth it to you, then like you got to do your homework and figure out, what does that look like? How many times a week do I want to go out to eat? How many times can I realistically go out to eat? And also, what do those meals when I go out to eat need to look like? Because that's
Mhm.
the other part of it too. It's like not, I'm going, okay, maybe I'm going out 3 to 4 times a week, but that's not 3 to 4 times a week as a free for all. Maybe 3 out of those 4 times, it's like a grilled chicken salad. Sorry. And then the reality is like maybe for you, you actually can get away with a little bit more. And you know what? That's awesome. But then the conversation always comes back to me like, okay, well, is that worth it to me? For me, it is. I don't mind. This is the lifestyle I live. But if that's not worth it to you, then you have to adjust your expectation for the physique that you can realistically that you're willing to maintain.
Think that for most people to stay as lean as they want to as well, it does require a lot of mental work, which you have to be okay with doing. Oftentimes, like for someone in maintenance, this is the biggest thing. If we struggle to maintain, the biggest thing holding people back is oftentimes like willingness to do the mental work and digging into like things like we thought about this a lot in terms of like alcohol. Okay, why do not that like drinking a lot is bad if that's your jam, but why do I feel so compelled to do this in this situation? For me, like a lot with both alcohol and food, like working through so much of like, okay, I enjoy this like 2 pieces of pizza. This was delicious. I feel full. I know if I eat more, I'm gonna feel like crap, but I still feel so compelled and so driven to eat more. Like, do I need to honor that? Why might I feel that way? Like, being willing to like dig into all those things and like your thoughts around food and all of this and like specifically that like oftentimes like urge to overindulge. I think that again, just to make maintenance successful, we have to be willing to do that. But it's just like a different concept, and it's like it just takes like awareness and again, just being able to spend a lot of time like thinking and considering, and almost like discomfort in terms of like, well, I'm full. My brain is telling me I should keep eating this, but I don't. I'm not going to, right? And just being willing to work through that for a long time. I mean, I don't think it goes away. Like we all love delicious food. Like Natalie, these brownies you made me were incredible. Right? Like I got that out and I was like, I'm gonna eat like a quarter of it and I just ate the whole thing. I was like, wow, that's weird. I thought I had more discipline than that, but maybe not. Anyways, I would say another big part of it is I think setting up your environment. I also think that like people who successfully maintain quite well, I think that's misunderstood in that people have this perception that once I get there, I will just have iron willpower. And I can just like have all these things around me that like in the past I would like smash a pint of ice cream or whatever, and no, that won't bother me anymore. I can just like look at it and like flex my abs at it or something. Where it is a lot of times just again you just put yourself in a you get better at putting yourself in positions to be successful and then take less willpower. That's why I don't have Natalie send me more brownies, right? Because it would make maintaining a lot harder. Anything else y'all would add there?
I think managing this kind of goes along the same lines as the conversation of the mental work too, Jeremiah, but managing social situations I think is just such a huge one. There are it's funny just seeing across different people the expectation for what that should look like. Um if if someone has a full social life, there are weekly opportunities for using food to celebrate. Like even if you just think about your own like immediate family, like there's birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, and like, it's so many different things that you can use food to celebrate for, which is what most people are doing because that's just easy. And if you expect that every single thing that comes up, like it's my brother-in-law's birthday, I had to have some cake. Eh, is that true? Like that kind of thing needs really challenged for a lot of people as well with fat loss, but also maintenance. And I think that a lot of people think that that's maybe not fair, and maybe it's not, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I think the people who nail maintenance, who like really learn to sit there and like successfully maintain their physique, are the ones that are have learned to use discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So like for those examples that you brought up, Andrea, like the ones that are actually able to discern like occasions, like, all right, like it's my brother-in-law just got promoted and there's a cake, but like next week is my daughter's 5th birthday. Okay, like which one is more, not to pit these against each other because they're both, important, but like, first and foremost, like, do you need to have a piece of cake to celebrate anything in particular? I mean, I'm not gonna I love cake, so I like legit love cake. But is that the very definition of what it means to like celebrate an occasion? And if it is, do we need to do that for every occasion? Or maybe we can pick a handful. So, like I said, you just get better at using your discretion, and making and prioritizing. I mean, I always like to say if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority because you don't have to look very hard to find an occasion to celebrate. Again, like it's always like your dog's birthday, which granted is important, or like, your
Max's
spouse.
is tomorrow.
There's just always something. Like if you have a lot of friends, it's always someone's birthday, and I'm not saying one friend is more important than the other. I would definitely rather have cake on Andrea's birthday than Jeremiah's, for example. But you just get better at like making those decisions, and that's why maintenance is such a hard conversation because there's no like it's kind of up to you to decide what those lines are. Like no one can make those choices for you. And if you decide that it's always worth it, all right, well, like then now we need to kind of like live with those consequences.
All very well put. I think this is a great way to kind of wrap the episode up. I think very helpful. Again, especially if you're working with a coach or coaching yourself. A lot to take away in terms of like if I'm not building muscle, if I'm struggling to maintain. So hopefully you all enjoyed this episode. Super fun to have both of you on here. If you enjoy the show, do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating or review. If you want to apply for coaching, click the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.